Amazonia, fellow brave warriors of our liberation movement. Accept liberation greetings from me this day, Comrade John Akuro. The date of today is the second day of August, and this is a Wednesday. And so, my people, this day I'm coming for us to take a much closer look at the outing of Archbishop Nkea Andrew of the Archdiocese of Bamenda. He made some very startling revelations, which I know you have all already watched, regarding the so-called Grand National Dialogue, and then the resultant of it, which was a marriage called a special status. But what is most important is that he tells us exactly how we got there. And my people of Ambazonia, I'm not coming here to introduce this video to you for the first time, because I know you have watched it, you have listened to it, you have digested it. But I want us together to take another perspective to this particular video, because there are things regarding this video that I've mentioned here over and over and over before that may seem somehow, some people sometimes definitely just do not get it. But the truth is, these things are not new. They have been said before. We have been informed that these things were happening, that they are happening. They are still going to happen, because that is the nature of the kind of movement in which we find ourselves, a liberation movement. Not everybody often feels like they really want to be liberated. And the reason is simple. Because they fear, because of uncertainty. They don't know whether in the improvement, whether in the next, should I say, whether in the new country, they will maintain the privileges that they have in the old one over all the other people. These are the kind of people who don't look at the general good. They look at the self. The self is more important than the community. They don't have that sense of sacrifice. They don't believe in sacrificing for the common good. And those are the kind of people who for the past 60 years have called themselves our leaders, not only in the southern Cameroons, or call it Ambazonia, not only in La République du Cameroun, but across the African continent. It's a phenomenon that is being dealt with too today across the continent. People who come up claim that they are fighting and are ready to die for us, whereas they are fighting for themselves and their immediate nuclear families. That has been the situation. On this set, way back in 2018, I said that there was an heinous meeting at the home of Mr. Tanyembianyo Clarkson. I say this here and I repeat every day, and that house is at Elever in Yaoundé. At the end of that meeting, one of those who attended that meeting sent me the minutes of that meeting, and I presented them. Sometimes in our liberation movement, we decide to say, if it comes from A, I will not believe it, I will not even listen to it, I will not even care about it, because it didn't come from Y. But what I've always said here, and I repeat it, let's mind to pick and choose the kind of things we should listen to. When I say pick and choose, there are things that you can, they say this is outright rubbish because someone is coming to call the names of others and say a bunch of inanities. But when we get information regarding the actions, plans, and approaches of those who are determined that we will stay in slavery and servitude forever because they and their children are getting privileges, pay heed. Whether it comes from people you don't like, pay heed. Because it's very important. You will see for yourselves what Archbishop Nkea is saying, and that we will be listening to and dissecting gradually, is not different from what we have observed over the years. We listened to Victor Julius Ngor. Where did you think Victor Julius Ngor was coming from? Of course, because La République du Cameroun took time off to study the southern Cameroons and told itself, we will divide these people in two separate administrative units. For one reason, because we were not just two units. Why did they decide to share us into two units? Go back to your history. Your history tells you that in 1961, prior to joining La République du Cameroon in this incestuous relationship, the southern Cameroons was in 4 divisions. You had the Mamfe division, the Kumba division, the Boya division, and the Bamenda division. These were those that existed. Before, I think at one point, Kambe at one point was created as a Kambe division, but these are the ones that were there. And that's why you hear too often they even refer to those who come from the northern zone, like we can call northern zone, they refer to the Bamenda people, because that was the province at the time. So when you look at this, you say, but when we move in and they wanted to make a system of provinces, why didn't they just maintain us as 4 provinces if that is really what they wanted? But they looked at it, they needed to do a kind of divide, that they will create some kind of divide that will become so sensitive. So they will use it so that we will fight ourselves whenever we feel like we need to fight together. They will introduce this, they will inject this, we will fight ourselves, and they will continue to reap the spoils. And that is what has been ongoing from time immemorial. I want to say from 1961. They were deliberate about what they were doing. And that is why you will notice that even in political appointments, they made it a competition between the 2 entities they divided in regions. And when they sit today to tell you that no, we cannot again join with these people because what we saw from them, I want to take you back down memory lane because I will come back to this. And when I'm coming back to this, I will have some guests on this set who will talk to us about how the Southern Cameroon's community was ruled politically at the time. Who are they talking about? About these people dealt with us? You listen to Harriet Ekwe, who talks about La République du Cameroun. She tells you that you go even to the far north. You visit 5 offices, 3/4 of the people in that office are talking Bulu. I mean, in the far north, among the top officials in that administration, 3/4 of them will even hold service meetings in Bulu. She said you go to Douala, it's worse. Sometimes 90% or 99%, in some cases, she even quoted 100% of people speaking Bulu. Now, who are those who underdeveloped the Southern Cameroons? Is it the people from the grass field? Like Belamoki says, the people we don't like? I saw Belamoki and I displayed him here the other day, decrying the state of the roads. Was it done by the people from the grass field or the Bamenda people? What I want to point out here is this whole thing is something that is generally orchestrated from Yaoundé through the wicked and evil so-called elite who have been picked and added to the 2% of those who have rendered the whole entity called Cameroon rotten for their sake and the sake of their children, and just those ones only. So when they add them there, therefore, they use them because they break them. Let me tell you this. Get into La République du Cameroun itself. Which region of La République du Cameroun will tell you that they are willing to be with the other one? Because sometimes when we listen to these things, we shouldn't just get carried away. It is a trend. Mr. Paul Biya is the prince of divide and rule. He has divided that country so much so that even within families, people don't say hello to one another. And I want to give you a simple example. When Paul Biya noticed that late Barrister Ben Muna, that's of blessed memory, and Barrister Akere Muna, that these 2 prominent people in the Muna family will not easily yield to the antics of his regime. What did they do? They went and picked the weaker link, who was Ama Tutu Muna, and brought her into the government, of course, as a representative of the powerful Muna family. And as a result, they want you to see the Muna family through the prism of Ama Tutu Muna. And at the end of the day, when she's ejected from government, they noticed that Ben and Akere were getting stronger with the opposition. What did they do? They needed now to weaken them. They need to set them against each other. I'm going just from family nucleus so we understand what we are grappling with. Because there are many like that that I can bring to the table here. And I'll bring at least 2 more examples. So you see, to the point where right now, we are at a level where Ama Tutu Muna, junior sister to Barrister Akere Muna, sued him with the support of the regime. Oh yes, sued him with the support of Laurent Esso. And so that they use that lawsuit and use the possibility that they hold a yam and a knife and can jail Barrister Keremuna at any time to use that as a bulwark against him and to weaken him. That is who La République du Cameroon has been. So I'm not surprised. One like Mfon Mukete, everybody knows. It's not news. Everybody knows that inside Meme, the Bafo people tell you Mfon Mukete's roots are from Momo. On the grass field, the same grass where Mukete is one who is reputed by Archbishop Nkea to have stood up to say why they can never be with these people. Mfon Mukete, his roots are from Momo. He moved along with the Germans, found himself in the palace of the Mukete, and eventually, by whatever magic, of course, was hardworking, I think his father or himself were hardworking young people, hardworking to a point where they took over the kingdom. And today, a kettle has the guts to paint a pot black. Are you surprised, therefore, that at over 100, Biya will still maintain Mukete as senator? That after Mukete, he has to immediately appoint his son to become senator, as if the position is hereditary. These are things we need to know. And these are things I've talked about on this platform over and over and over. Oh, thank you, comrade. I can see your... Thank you, G40. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, I can see your text. I'm sorry for the interruptions that you're written persistently. You're saying that, I should address the issue of Capo Daniel. Let me be very clear here. I absolutely had promised to come to this set and to look at the outing that Capo Daniel had on my Media Prime TV. But I received a lot of calls from a lot of people in the southern Cameroons, in the Ambazonian community, and they told me, don't use a mountain to crack a walnut. Don't burn an entire forest to catch a squirrel. And so they petitioned me. I insisted, don't get to it because it's a non-event. And so I finally, let's say, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. But of course, I watched a little piece in which he challenged me to combat by saying that if Mbakuro doesn't close his mouth, he's going to open his file. But while I'm not going to talk about it because I've had this recent, pieces of advice, words of wisdom, I'd like to encourage Mr. Capo Daniel to go ahead and open my file. My file is public. There is nothing about my file that has not been opened. Nothing that you will say about me today that has not been said before. No creation that you will come with today that has not been said. Because even CPDM, government ministers, have come to me and said, oh, you ran away from the country because you were owing a lot of colleagues at CITV, and I asked them, name one. Is that country not a country of law? Is there no Interpol that they can come up to say that this man took our money and disappeared? Name one of them and let one of them come up. Don't be afraid about it. So there's nothing that we talk about. That I'm still collecting my salary from the public service or from CITV. They have said it. What else do you have to say? Open the file. Don't leave anything behind. The people of Ambazonia deserve to know us, know who we are, where we come from, and where we are headed. So, Mr. Capo, to your credit, come on, go ahead. You have my full authorization to open that file. So that said, I like us to begin watching Archbishop Nkea, and then we go step by step, because this is very important, and like I said, it is fundamental to us. We need to know these things, because when we know these whole truths, these truths will definitely set us free. So let's begin.
You were seen in several occasions advocating for peace. You also led the caravan.
I did a 2-hour interview with Radio Evangelium of Manfred to explain to the people what had happened in the dialogue. What happened? When we went in for a grand dialogue, I must be clear to you, the bishops of this province had already put out a memorandum to the Prime Minister in preparation for the dialogue to stand for federation. We said federation. And this is how we went into the dialogue. Now, this is what I want to explain to your televiewers.
Right.
When we went into that dialogue and we started talking, this was still the opening of the dialogue. It was Chief, the late von Nkea, who got up and he made an analysis. All the videos are still there. Von Nkea started by saying that the position of...
So let's interrupt him there briefly. So he says, prior to going to that dialogue, of course he went with a document that the bishops, yes, at that time the Archbishop of Bamenda was Cornelius Eshua Fontem, and I recall, of course, I still have a copy of that memorandum that they wrote calling on a return to the two-state federation. Don't forget, at that time too, the consortium was actually calling for a return to the two-state federation. This is a fact, it's grounded in exactly what happened. And so this call for a return to the federal system was strong, and that is what was sticky in the negotiations, the round of negotiations between the 5, sometimes 7 government ministers of La République du Cameroun that traveled to Bamenda to hold sessions with the leaders of the consortium, particularly with those that were led by the teachers' unions. Of course, you know, Pat Tassan was leading that charge. And the ultimate day that matters really came to a head when the government of Cameroon realized that the underneath of the entire discussion was that it was the form of the state that needed to change, because the consortium was born from that belief that rather than having just the teachers or the lawyers requesting for the respect of common law, the respect of the common law, the maintenance of the common law as it was against the dismantling of sin, rather than having just the teachers fighting for the maintenance of the Anglo-Saxon system of education as it were, without having it totally watered down and francophonized. They felt that there was need for this issue to be addressed comprehensively, because that issue was affecting the entire strata of the Southern Cameroon's community. And that is why the lawyers canvassed and got in the trade unions, movements and groups of all the sectors of national life in the Southern Cameroons to form what was called the consortium. That's why in the consortium you had traders unions, you had transporters unions, you had drivers unions, you had unions of journalists, you have unions. In fact, everything was a melting pot. And at that time the demand was, let's go back to the federal system, because that is what at that time politically seemed quite feasible. And the bishops of the Bamenda ecclesiastical province, who are close to the people, who talk to the ordinary man, because those are the people that they are dealing with, realize that the ordinary man overwhelmingly on the entire territory of the Southern Cameroons wanted autonomy from the central administration in Yaoundé. In fact, they wanted at least a return to the federal system at that time. And so, therefore, that's why all the bishops of the Bamenda ecclesiastical province signed that memorandum calling for a return to the federal system. And of course, the consortium spearheaded this. But the talks got tight on the 13th. Was it the 13th? Somewhere, yeah, before the... Yes, on the 13th of January. Or was it before the 13th of January 2017? When at Up Station, it got so hot that, we sent word out that they were taking our representatives hostage and asking them to sign things that they did not want to sign. I talked to Pat Tassan at the time. They went inside the hall and said, all the professional, purely professional demands, requests we have made, they have agreed to them. But now what is holding things is what you know. And what we know was that we were saying, let them also agree that we will have a return to the federal system. And that is why the government of La Republic of Cameroon had understood and quickly accepted all the professional demands, although they had no intention of implementing any of them. But the reason was they wanted to unbear the whole thing so as to have our delegates, should I say, before a fait accompli, and then force them. But they held their ground because they knew what the people wanted. It was on the 9th of February 2017, while we were already in Nigeria, that in a video broadcast, Patasan Wilfred, who was then the facto leader of the consortium, talked about the need to move from any talk about federation, about federalism, to absolute independence. This is how it moved. So now when Archbishop Nkea is talking about this, is real. By the time they got to that dialogue, of course, they had that document. It's true that the entire strata of the Southern Cameroons had already evolved completely from the issue of a two-state federation to one of absolute independence on account of the brutality that we all saw, that we all witnessed as we got up to ask for our rights. And so therefore, even by the time they went into that Grand National Dialogue, you recall, the late Christian Cardinal Tome had already conducted a survey. This survey was in Southern Cameroon on the ground, not in Bamenda, not only in Bamenda, not only in Boya, but across the Bamenda Ecclesiastical Province. And his findings were 69% of those who were interviewed said they wanted not just independence, absolute independence. This is something we should know. But now, let's listen to what Nkea said, and I'll explain to us all again exactly why I had to get to that. But I started by giving us all a preamble to understand that Mr. Paul Biya is the Prince of Division. I talked about the Muna family. I'll come to the Agbotabi family because nobody doubts that in the Tabi's family, we had Agbotabi Peter and Agbotabi John. These two could not see each other eyeball to eyeball. One stood for change and the other stood for the status quo. And this were all being prompted by the regime. There are too many such families that I can cite. Both in Southern Cameroon and in La République du Cameroun, there is no village, community, where there is harmony, where there is peace and concord. No. Mr. Paul Biya believed that the only way he could survive is to divide and divide and divide as much as possible to rule. That's why we are facing the difficulties that we are facing. Because anytime, even in this liberation movement, that we want to come together, you find that they will always have someone or some people that they will use internally to scatter everything, and we'll find ourselves going back to square one. I want to congratulate all the people of the Southern Cameroons, all the people of Ambazonia, because we have maintained the steam right up to this point and going. La République du Cameroon expected that with such massive attempts to divide, they would only have succeeded to rip us apart until we just kill ourselves and then come back to them crawling on our stomachs and begging even for the crumbs. Let's listen again to Archbishop Nkea.
Of the Southwest was that they don't want to have anything to do with the Northwest. And that if they are talking about federation, the Southwest position was that they didn't want any federation as long as that will have them to do with the Northwest. We're all in this hall. And Nkea went back to history to analyze the divisions and the disagreements between Southwest and Northwest. And that federation on condition that Southwest and Northwest are not together. Now, when he said this was the position that the South.
So, this is what Nkea says. Yes to federation, but it should be 10 states. And 10 states because the Southwest, what we call Southwest, does not want to find itself in any form of union where they will have to be with the people of the Northwest. Now, when you look at it at surface level, you say, oh, these people, they really want to protect the interests of the people of the Southwest. This is simple. The reason is, for decades, they spent time giving the impression to the people of the place they call Southwest that they had all the natural resources, that they're an oasis, the best, the most beautiful place to belong to in the world, and that the place they call Northwest is arid land, dry land with nothing completely, no resources, nothing. And so the people of the so-called Northwest are pushing too much to have a federation to be only on the people of the Southwest, because they are counting on their riches, on their resources, on which are these resources: oil and forest. That this is what they are counting on. You know, I said here in the broadcast, it is not today that La République du Cameroon is aware that there is serious stock of iron ore deposits in the Donga Mantung Bui area, in the Ntumbo basin. No, it's not only today that they know. It is not only today that they know as well that there is oil in the northern zone. It's not only today. In Bamenda, that's in what they call Northwest region. It's not only today. It is not only today that they are aware that we even have deposits of uranium in the northern zone. It is not only today. They are aware. But for political reasons, this needed to be kept under wraps and under keys, so that the narrative according to which the very poor people from the arid Northwest want at all costs to be linked, to be in a union with the people of the very wonderful oasis of the Southwest, so they should benefit, so they should tap their resources and exploit and dominate and overcome these people. That has been the narrative from La République du Cameroon. Listen, folks, this is not supposition. I'm not just deducing. No, I lived this thing because I talked to these people one-on-one. I work with a lot of these so-called political elites one-on-one. I'm telling you. I just don't want to be mean, because I could start calling some of their names and recalling to them our conversations. Some of them are still there in government. So a good lot of them are still there singing CPDM from morning till evening. But when they sit in their bedrooms, they cry. I mean, cry until hot tears are running down their cheeks about how they are being mistreated, marginalized, how they are being cheated because they are Southern Cameroonians. Oh yes, I mean those ministers, those directors general, those directors, all of them, without distinction. I mean all, without distinction. They know as I'm talking, and also they're watching me. They record instances who have sat with the way they have talked and literally shed tears. There are some who spoke not only in my presence, the presence of other journalists of Southern Cameroon's extractions. They know this. But because the mantra is that they must go out there to do what they have been asked to do, otherwise the sledgehammer will fall. And they know they cannot escape. They will end in jail if they decide to depart from that to say something different. That's why you find them, even at 99 years, where their future is behind them. I mean, when their future is behind them, they still have to claim that loyalty, because they have been told that their sins will be visited upon their children, upon their children's children, because they have been convinced to understand that after beer will be beer, and after beer again will be beer, and after beer again will be being vondo. So consequently, where they are seated, they believe that Paul Biya is the Alpha and the Omega forever and ever. That system in La République, that is what is happening. So therefore, don't be surprised with what you hear. That's why you notice that conduct surveys with the people, you will discover that there is what? There is a serious gulf between the so-called elite and the people that are supposed to be elites over. Now look at all of those elite. What percentage of those elite live with their people right now? If they're the elite in control of the situation, loved by their people, over whom they are elites, who should venerate them. How many of them are living with their people? How many of them will go to their villages without moving in 10, 20 armored cars? How many of them? Because this is what they do. Because this is what they are hired to do. This is what they are encouraged to do. Push this narrative and then let the world understand that, oh, they are the people themselves who don't want to. That is why I've said here on this set several times, we are on our own. The never again generation is putting this particular useless, evil, blood-sucking generation to serious test. Not just to test, they have put them in a serious corner, in a very tight corner. They can't talk again. All they can do is make noise in such fora which are marked only by them. That is why the delegates to the so-called Grand National Dialogue were carefully picked. And then, to give the impression to the international community that they invited other people who could normally come and talk and bring ideas, and they never came, they extended to some of us invitation letters. Of course, I received one. The Prime Minister's office, the Director of Cabinet, the Prime Minister's office reached out to me, talked to me, they talked to quite others, invited, oh, no, please come, we have your flight tickets and everything. But at the same time, my name is on the list of 12 that they shared with Interpol to make sure they capture me wherever they see me and ship to them. The same thing with all other people from the diaspora, determined to fight for the freedom of Ambazonia, whom they invited. So the simple reason is they knew you will not come, but let's give the impression that we invited you and you refused to come. Because they already had these their planted agents, they already had this their evil elite, that they had already done all of this, encouraged them and agreed with them, this is what you will do. So that the international invitees that are there should see that this thing of people of the southern Cameroon, they are not one. They're very divided. The same thing they've been trying to do among our various groups, movements, and organizations in the diaspora. So let's listen again.
Southwest brought to dialogue, and the Southwest said 10 state federation. They were for federation, but 10 state federation. One man from the east and one from the north got up and said, look, we have never been a state. Why do you want to force us into statehood? You say you want 10 states. Why are you forcing us to be a state? You were a state, you know what it means. We have never been. So we don't want...
So did you hear this? Now, you hear the pushback from the people of La République du Cameroon who doesn't know them what it means to operate in that kind of federal system where they are states. So that's what they tell them, but you want to be a state. We don't want to be a state. We have never been. It's not part of their culture. And listen, mind what they say, you have been a state. Did you get that? So even the politicians of La République du Cameroon recognize the Southern Cameroon was a state that came to join their own state. The East had never been a state. The North had never been a state. The far North had never been a state. A combination of all of those regions, Center, South, East, North, Far North, Adamawa, Littoral, West, and South, they all make up one state, which was the state of East Cameroon, known as La République du Cameroon. That is where they recognize themselves. And so when they look at us, anything apart from that was another state called Southern Cameroons that came into being with them in some kind of union in which they ended up being called West Cameroon. And therefore, we were a state they have never been. And so therefore, you should be understanding why these people should be logically irritated. Because they'll be telling themselves, but your people are asking, your people, the grassroots, want the statehood of the Southern Cameroons to be maintained, as it were. You people don't want it. You want now to break into several other states. Don't involve us. Go and fight among yourselves. Don't forget, we have said throughout this journey to our freedom, the Southern Cameroons, which will be renamed Ambazonia, when we finally send out the last vestiges of La République's colonial administration on our territory, will be a federal state. That's why you hear we already call it the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. That's what it will be. a federal state, it will be a federated state, where the people in their geographical confines will be allowed to choose their leaders, to determine their development priorities, and to manage their affairs, and only have a loose connection, like it is the case with the United States of America, with the central government, with the federal government. These people are not oblivious of this fact. They know. But because they have been told that if you maintain these people in subjugation, you and your generations will never be poor. So they look at themselves and forget about the community benefit. That's what this is all about. Let's listen to Archbishop Nkea again.
Why do you want to force us into statehood? You say you want 10 states. Why are you forcing us to be a state? You were a state, you know what it means. We have never been. So we don't want state. Big argument broke out in the hall. And in the end, it is some lawyer who got up and went back to the Constitution and said, okay, with these arguments, there is provision for special status.
Now, we'll come back to the issue of special status. Do we recall that during the conversations, during the deliberations at that so-called Grand National Dialogue, we all saw Nkea Felix Agbobala scream and cry and get to some point even, he almost seemed ridiculous, begging for a federation that we said the people have roundly rejected. We all recall. Now, why was he screaming out there and crying and begging as if he was begging from La République du Cameroon? When what Archbishop Andrew is telling us here right now is that those who were against that particular federation that he has been asking for were the same people claiming to be his brothers from what they call Southwest. Just take a look at that. Take a look at that. Because they felt that this could end in the hall among them because they are from the same thing, my brothers and sisters from Bayangi, from Manyuko and Nyankwe. Because they're in the same Nyankwe. So it's going to remain within their confines. I want at least to thank Archbishop Andrew Nkea for coming out to let everyone see the greed that we have been talking about from these so-called dynasties. The greed that we're seeing from these so-called dynasties. They know. So now, some time ago, there were talk about a referendum. I told people, let us hold on. We need to get to that mutual hurting stalemate at which we'll find ourselves on a true negotiation table. And once we'll be on that true negotiation table, possibly a referendum can become one of the compromises arrived at. And at this point, it will be organized by a structure carefully put in place to ensure that only those who are supposed to vote should vote. And everyone will open their eyes and see the result. Don't forget that after the survey conducted by the late venerated Christian Cardinal Toomey, there was another one conducted by the CDN. And the CDN set these things into the hands of SurveyMonkey, which is a very renowned institution in New York, United States of America, to ensure that this survey was legit and that the results could be dependable. 89%. 80, if it was it 89 or 82? In short, over 80%. That was not a departure from what the late Christian Cardinal Toomey organized. He came up with a result of 69% of people talking about absolute independence. Don't forget, the late Christian Cardinal Toomey in an interview said on the survey questions, on the questionnaires, they even made sure that they did not put independence anywhere, but they talked about the form of the state. And as those who want federation, those who want decentralization, those who just want a unity state, and then order. And the people left all of these options and went to order and wrote absolute independence. So 69% of the people left all of these options that were proposed to them and went to where it was written order and absolutely wrote, this one is writing, it's not something that I just tick. It didn't exist. And wrote absolute independence. So didn't you write independence? Absolute independence. 69%. Just 2 years after, the next survey finds over 80%. So this tells you that this so-called elite have no connection with the base. That the gulf that exists between these people claiming to be talking on our behalf and us, on whose behalf they're supposed to be talking, is just so wide. The Bia regime had doubted it before, but now they know. Because this so-called elite had claimed the situation was under their control and they will quiet everything down, but they have gone to the field 1,001 times, spent government money claiming to go to talk to the people, to get the people back to order, and it never worked. They never even got received on a good number of times. Sometimes they had to ferry crowds from neighboring regions to bring into the southern Cameroons to claim that their meetings were popular. But as soon as they finished, they jumped in armored cars and turned their backs. Everything was back just as they met it. This is a clear indication that there is no connection anymore between these misguided folks calling themselves our elite and the people themselves. This is why we really shouldn't bother a lot about this trash, because none of us in the first place ever thought of something called special status, let alone the federal system. Someone asked me a question here that I'm about to answer, because when I come to the announcement that I have here, I will address that question on the appellations. But let's finish quickly with Archbishop Andrew Nkea.
So let us go back now to this constitution and see how this special status can help Northwest and Southwest remain a little bit independent, but at the same time, not within the federation. This was a compromise position that came out of the dialogue, because the Southwest position was that they wanted federation but nothing to do with the Northwest. These are clear facts of history that we lived through in the Grand National Dialogue. So now people are arguing, oh, they want federation, they want this, and the other. We sat in that hall, and this is how the word special status came about. This is something that we can say is the fruit of the dialogue. And since then, what I think is that they
So I want to thank Archbishop Andrew Nkea for, because, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this conversation ends here. He says that's one of the fruits. Fruits of the so-called Grand National Dialogue. And where has it gone to? Oh, blood of Jesus. But I want to congratulate the people of Ambazonia for standing strong, for standing firm in the face of the useless grip that this misguided so-called elite thought they had on the population. Our people from Boya, through Kumba, Mamfe, through Widikum, through Batipo, to Bamenda, have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that we are one people with one common destiny, and that we will fight together as one people until we get what is truly ours. La République du Cameroon's divisive machinery has failed to destroy this liberation movement. They started using it right from day one, but it has not worked. They have promoted this over and over, it has not worked. That's why even when they smuggled it through the Grand National Dialogue, they didn't have the courage to broadcast some of these things on TV, because the actors feared, because they knew how it would be received by the people. Thank you to Archbishop Nkea for bursting the bubble. So we know where this moribund kind of, where this piece of divine mysticism of nonsense, let me call it as, I think there's an actor in history, I think it was Prince Metternich, who called, was it the Holy Alliance or something of the sort, as a piece of divine mysticism and nonsense. So what I'm saying is, I want to thank the Archbishop Nkea for letting us know, finally, where this moribund kind of rubbish came from. That's the truth. Because after all is said and done, you notice that even they themselves came away from their high special status, there is nothing they can say about it. Not only because they really couldn't, because 99.99% of our people rejected it right from day one. They described it as dead upon arrival. It had no place. And that's why it has never taken root. That's why even those who talked about it knew themselves. They were convinced that it could not go anywhere. That's why they themselves never made even any effort to try to implement it. My people of Ambazonia, when I say what is happening in Ambazonia, in the southern Cameroons, is not different from what is happening on the African continent, I mean exactly what I'm saying. Because this tiny elite created in our setup that from the southern Cameroons, along with another tiny elite from La République du Cameroun, meant to dominate over these entities, is the same fabrication of powers hidden somewhere in the world to ensure that they continue to subjugate and dominate us. And it's the same thing across the continent. But before I get on to that one, I want to, take a quick 10-second break. And when I come away from this 10-second break, we will absolutely delve into this very important part of it. It will take us just a few minutes. Thank you and welcome back. So it's now official. I'll make this quick announcement before I continue to the next segment. It's now official that the All Ambazonia Conference, the AAC 2023, will henceforth be called the Southern Cameroon People's Conference. That's the SCPC, the Southern Cameroon People's Conference. And this change was made unanimously by the conveners and the co-conveners, the organizations that joined as co-conveners. And you definitely have seen that in the press release that was sent out yesterday. And so this all-important conference will be held in Canada, and this will be held from the 5th to the 8th of October 2023. 5th to the 8th of October, that's just over 2 months from today. And again, that will be a very serious and very important moment of communion between our people for us to determine how we really change the dynamics of our liberation movement. That's why there is point 2 of that communique that says that the SCPC shall be held from October 5th to 8th, 2023. So this is informed by the need to seek common ground with like-minded actors and stakeholders. All groups and relevant stakeholders within the Southern Cameroons community, including organized country delegations and constituencies, that's IDPs, refugees, and our comrades in prison, shall have a place on the table for a robust and revamping discussion to shape our collective future. I just picked that up because it summarizes everything about this conference. And of course, there is already a website for the conference. I'm going to share that on the comment section. It's going to be the first comment you see on the comment section because it will be pinned there. You can click on the link and then you go to the website and you will visit and you get as much information as you need about that conference. Of course, I'll be coming back to it with another very important broadcast. So the link is, that website is www.scpc, that is SCP conference, because the last C is saying conference, scpconference.com. So you should get there for more information. And if you want to send an email to ask questions, pointed questions directly, you send to info@scpconference.com and you get all the answers to your questions. So while I leave that, because I just wanted to make that pretty quick, and then we get back to the issues of the day. I want to address the question, therefore, that was asked me that I said that people who talked about Southern Cameroons are those who are standing for federation. And those who are talking about Ambazonia are those who want independence. Take this from me. My position has generally been clear. Our historical name is Southern Cameroons. When once we're able to kick La République du Cameroon out of our territory, because we will do that, okay? We are able to do that. It's just a matter of time. I mean, a short time from now, we'll be able to kick La République du Cameroon out of our territory. Once we get them fully out of our territory, we occupy our territory all over the world, we want to be called Ambazonia. So, we are Southern Cameroonians. That's how we were called. But we will graduate from Southern Cameroons into Ambazonia as an independent country. Once we kick out La République du Cameroon, we will officially rename our country. Right now, we already have agreed that is the name we want. We have our flag, we have our everything, we have all that is required of us to be a country. And so what we're simply doing is that at that time, it will become official, totally official. Right now, across the world, they already refer to us as Ambazonia, but there will be an act that will take us to that. Now, why did I say that those who say Southern Cameroons are people who want to stay for federation? I must make this very clear that, as a matter of fact, that those who, when you mention Ambazonia, but they say don't mention that thing, I don't want to hear about that thing, I'm not an Ambazonian. So even have the guts to use even the T word. They say I'm not an Ambazonian whatsoever. But trust me, the differentiation in names really has not very much, as far as I'm concerned, to my mind. But that those who insistently say it must be Southern Cameroons are those who are still trying to be reminiscent of those days, but collectively, generally, take note, the surveys have demonstrated over 80, now over 90% of our population wants independence. Once we kick La République du Cameroon out, we will definitely settle down and adopt the name Ambazonia. At that time, it may even change. But maybe say we don't even want to be called Ambazonia. We want to be called something else. But right now, the trend right now is that we should be called Ambazonia. So let's not hang on inanities and get confused about this. And so let's focus on what is right ahead. So I said a while ago that there is a gulf between a certain selfish, individualistic, demagogic, kleptocratic, should I continue? Elite, so-called elite across the African continent that tend to give the impression that they own the communities, they have a mastery of everything. But every day it is being proven that the gap between them and the people they claim to be speaking for is too wide, and that what they are saying today has nothing in common with what the majorities of the common people think. Take a look at this. This is Burkina Faso. You see, these are people in Burkina Faso, hundreds of thousands of people marching to the airport to go and receive a military leader, somebody who came to power through a coup in Burkina Faso. Oh yes, they are marching like this, go and give a triumphant reception. This guy didn't get there through a democratic election. No, it wasn't through a democratic election. He got there by coup. But he is of a younger generation. This gentleman has proven to the people of Burkina Faso, for that matter, and to the people of the African continent in general, that so-called democratic elections in Africa are simply meant to fabricate and replicate demagogues who come and sit there to protect interests foreign to the people that are supposed to be representing and governing. It's that simple. So, how are in Ambazonia? You have some people like the Muketes, like the Mbelamokis, like the Musonges, like the Atanga Ponjis. They'll go and sit up there and claim that they are talking on behalf of the people of the Southern Cameroons, and so, according to them, their people don't want this. No connection. No connection. They can't even go back to those communities. Take a look again. I'm still in Burkina Faso. I've not left. Huh? Look at this is yet another clip from Burkina Faso. I've not left. Take a look. My people, just look at this. The other one, the people were still marching and going, but now he's arrived. See the way he is clad in the people. You don't have cars surrounding his car, or just have a few military. The people are out there. They are ready to die for this young man. They are ready to die for him. This is the leader of a military coup, but he understands the language of the younger generation of the people of Africa, of the people of Burkina Faso for that matter. He understands the plight of the people. The people are sick and tired of a democratic setup that only replicates people who come there to protect interests foreign to their countries, foreign to their interests, and they continue to suffer and die on a daily basis. What you are seeing here should be something that is sending shockwaves down the spines of that old guard, of those old politicians in Burkina Faso right now. Not only in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. I'm sure that even as we speak now, in Abuja, there should be no peace. Tinubu sleep will get dried from his eyes because he sees it, he knows how he himself got to power in Nigeria. I'm sure in Yaoundé, probably is thinking, what do I need to do next? You will soon hear in the next few days that the salaries of the military people have been raised again because in Cameroon, the military does not exist. Those are some scouts in the hands of in the pockets of Mr. Paul Biya that he can use for anything. So consequent on that, he has incorporated them into the gang of elite and making sure they have all the advantages imaginable so that they forget about him wherever he is. But when he sees images like this, he starts asking himself, will there not be some who will come up with a rethink? I'm sure in Libreville, where Bongo cannot even walk, he needs to go sit somewhere and be recovering from his ailment. He will not. I'm sure in Libreville, they have lost sleep. I'm convinced that in Brazzaville, when Sassou Nguesso is struggling to also get his own son to take over from him when he will leave power or when he will die, I'm sure even there, sleepless nights. Images like this, they are clear and they speak for themselves. Surprise, therefore, that this young man, along with the other young man in Guinea, along with the other young man in Mali, have vowed to immediately go to war if anyone dares to restore so-called constitutional order in Niger, in Niamey. This is because the gap between the so-called elite and the masses is too wide. There is no connecting power. The elite or the so-called elite have stolen and stolen and stolen and taken just so much that the people have noticed and have said, enough is enough. Enough of this nonsense. My dear people of Ambazonia, something is happening in Ambazonia. Something is happening in southern Cameroon. Something is happening around the world. There is a new reawakening. There is a serious rebirth in the hearts and minds of the people. This old divisive guard that have held us down for a long time through divide and rule, they will phase out. Even the dynasties they have created, they know that their time is up. And there is no way that they will continue to hold us down. My dear people of Ambazonia, I'm delighted that you found time to sit with me through this broadcast, and I will be back here as soon as I'm able to create time within my schedule. But I definitely will be back here, perhaps in the next 48 hours. To God and to Him alone be all the glory. Until then, ciao.